Hey, everybody, welcome. We call the meeting to order. Today is, I'm looking at the wrong side. No, sorry, Tuesday, July 28th. And I guess we will start off with the attendance.
Okay, Pam Nelson. Holly Thurston. Michael Benzino.
Here.
Michael Aronson. Here. Richard Klein.
Here.
And Chair.
Thank you. All right, so, and I just want to welcome Michael Benzino to the planning board here. I know he's coming over from HBC. This is his first meeting with us, so I just wanted to extend that welcome. I also just want to make a note that, not on the board right now, but at our next meeting and attending today is Corey Blott, who will be joining our next meeting. So just wanted to give a welcome and a thank you, to Corey for attending and for her future work.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so, first item on our agenda, we have, the approval of the last minutes. Last minutes from June 23rd. I do believe that everybody that is here was present at that meeting. So can I have a motion, can I have a motion from the board for approval of those minutes?
Motion to approve?
Michael Aronson, second.
All right, and anyone object? One does, okay, so that carries. All right, next up on the agenda, so the next item on the written agenda is a discussion of some small scale zoning changes. We're gonna push that to the end of the agenda, so we can jump right into new business. So without further ado, first item of new business tonight. First item of new business is 36 Water Street. This is an application, new application for site plan, conditional use, VAR, tree removal, and wetlands approval for the construction of 137 unit residential building and associated improvement. So you're walking here. Welcome, and you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk briefly about the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my name is Patrick Siri. I'm a principal Siri consultant, and we're here tonight to reintroduce you to a project known as Hidden Cove on the Hudson. So some of you may remember this project. In 2018, this project received approval from your board. All of its entitlements were put in place. At that time, due to a number of internal factors, external factors, there was a pandemic that rolled through that delayed things. And as a result of that delay, all of those entitlements expired. So we're in a position now where the owner of the property is ready to pick that project back up, advance the very same project, no changes essentially, and reestablish all those entitlements that were established in 2018. So just to give you some perspective, this is about a 5-acre site. It's on Water Street, East Green Road, famous Hill Factory that most of you are a site that most of you are familiar with. The proposed development has been sort of strategically sited to take advantage of that developed portion of the property up on the plateau. So as a result of being strategic and locating that building, roughly a quarter of the site remains undisturbed and undeveloped. There'll be a conservation easement that will be applied to that portion of the property. Really kind of a uniquely sited property, and that is, it's very much a TOD project. It's about 3,000 feet to the train station down the hill, which makes it a sort of a very beneficial TOD type of development. So that's, I'm glad to be able to thank you. So what the project is, as you said, it's a 6-story building. It's 137 multifamily units. And what that is, what that consists of is 103 2-bedroom units and 24 1-bedroom units. And I'll also point out that that plateau on the property is about at elevation 70. So that building at that elevation provides beautiful views of the river. It's really a spectacular site in that context. The building will be supported by 189 off-street parking spaces. You can see in that lower level, that's a ground level parking garage. There's surface parking as well. Access to the property will be provided by the extension of Water Street that will come up the hill. New utility infrastructure will also be expanded, sewer and water connections. The existing pump station will be expanded to support this building. One of the many unique features of this project, it's being designed to a very high level of green building. So whether that's a LEED Gold certification meant to be determined, what type of building certification, but it would be a green building. In that, it includes, it'll be a fossil-free building, solar panels, geothermal, wells supporting the building, integrated air source heat pumps for each individual unit. The connectivity back to the train station makes it a very green building in that sense. There'll be EV charging stations. A really unique component of this is there will be on-site a fleet of EV vehicles that would be available for rent by residents. They're calling them Cove cars. Or, there'll be an extensive landscaping plan that's sort of a zero, designed as a zero-scape project, so very little water that's required to irrigate the project. Limiting pesticides, herbicides, that's a significant benefit. Green roof, gardens on the roof for residents to utilize. So there's a lot of benefits that are coming out of this project. So one of them is creating a new pedestrian connection for Lucky Park, nature preserve, which I think is dog friendly, if I'm not mistaken. So you guys have talked about the dogs. There you go. Another unique feature, if you can move to the next slide. There's a pavilion, a little pavilion that's proposed. This is a nod to the historic character of the old pill factory on the site. So this reflects the architecture. It'll have educational displays inside reflecting how the site was previously used, publicly accessible. There'll be public parking in front of that to, again, reflect the character of what used to be on that site before all of those buildings were demolished about 8 years ago or so on the property. You have a memo from Valerie and NPV, which sort of talks through the entitlements that are required for us to reestablish. There's a lot of them. This was a fairly complex process when the applicant went through this in 2018. So we need to reapprove the site plan on this. This is a planned waterfront special permit that's required for this, a conditional use permit. We require architectural review for this project. The architect's not here tonight, so I can really speak to some of the unique features, but a lot of thought went into the architecture of the building as well. We need a wetland permit, we need a tree permit. There are 4 variances that are required for this. There is a building width variance. There's a water course setback variance, frontage on a public street. And we do require an off-street parking variance as well. We think that's not a significant issue given the proximity to the train station. Or Cove car provisions. So we require 257, we're providing 198 parking spaces. We need to redo health department approvals, we need to redo a speech permit with DPC, Army Corps permit, nationwide permit for this. We actually need a permit for the Metro North, and a tree permit for Metro North. So a lot of reestablishing permits that were obtained a few years ago. As most of you know, we have new seeker reform legislation that is now in place. So this project now is considered an exempt project. So seeker does not apply any longer for projects like this. However, we did provide a full long environmental assessment form that gives you some sense of the impact, which essentially are identical to what we went through some time ago. The village, since we were last before you, since this project is last before you, updated wetland code, updated pre-code. The plan that's before you takes those new modified codes into consideration. And there's one relatively minor change. There was a culvert that was an enclosed pipe previously. Army Corps had some concerns about that. Now it's a U-shaped open bottom culvert. That's really the only change. No change to footprint, no change to scale, mass, anything else. Same exact project that was there in 2018. So what I'll do now, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Dan Collins from Hudson Engineering to actually talk about our plans.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Dan Collins, Hudson Engineering. We can pull up the engineering real quick. I guess the cover sheet's on. You can just.
Okay. A lot here.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was worried about.
How's that?
Do up one, just the cover sheet, one more. Is it possible to zoom in just to?
Yeah.
Okay. So this gives a pretty good overall starting for where everything is. Previously mentioned, we are proposing a 6-story, 137 unit apartment building. To the north of the building, the parking, exterior parking to the north is permanent with pavement. With the. Permanent pavement to the north and parking below, as we already mentioned, the existing brook to the back. In the previous design, we did change this so that we could get the sewer underneath the pipe before they were proposing a siphon. We've had discussions with Paul, the village, it's not something that he was looking forward to or having to approve. So what we ended up doing was now we're proposing a 8x4 box culvert to capture the original flows from the stream. That's gonna go into two side-by-side 6x3 culverts that will run parallel, basically below the entire northern parking lot, until it gets to about where the existing sewer was or is. At that point, it's gonna switch again back to an 8x4 to the existing stream that daylights out to the Hudson River. Both those culverts are all sized for the 100-year storm, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. And that was all included in our sewer report. In addition to the on-site improvements, as you can see, the new improvements of the roadway alignment, which now follows closely along the railroad tracks, where it then bends around the plumbing building, then has a nice little curve where it bends back towards the building, and ends right where the two existing industrial buildings are to the north. As part of the stormwater, for the first half of the road, everything's sized for DEC, of course. For the first half of the road, we're gonna be treating that with an oversized hydrodynamic separator. What that does is it basically spins everything around, and the sediment settles, the oil raises to the top, and then the treated flow goes through. So this is sized to treat 100% of the water quality volume from the first half of the roadway, discharge the treated flows to the Hudson River. Right where the bend is, you can see a little hatched area for the stormwater. That's going to be a bioretention, what they call a focal point. That's basically a high flow filtration practice that can be planted up like a bioretention basin, sorry. You'd be planting it up with decorative water friendly plants and such. And then it basically is a green practice that filters the water, meeting both the water quality and the runoff reduction required by the DEC. This practice has been sized to treat those flows as well as bypass the flows for everything up to the 100 as well. In addition, as Pat mentioned previously, we are providing two areas of green roof adjacent to the patios that comes off the rear of the building, closer to the slope side and the south side of the building. That's going to treat that runoff that directly flows onto that area. And then that actually gets double treated. It'll actually be conveyed with the rest of the roof runoff to that same focal point area. For utilities, in order to get underneath that culvert, we're actually gonna have to lower the existing 10-inch pipe slightly so that we have the clearance below the actual culvert. That portion is gonna be lowered. We're gonna connect the new utility service for the whole building into the 10-inch line. There's also an existing sewer main that comes down the hill from the residential development on the top. Right now, we're gonna relocate that around because our corner of our building actually is gonna be on top of where the existing one is. We're gonna relocate that back into the hill and around the back so that that continues to have service up to the top of the hill. There's also a portion of the existing water main that goes underneath the existing plumbing building. So obviously, we don't want to leave that where it is. We're gonna actually relocate that around the existing plumbing building and then abandon what's underneath. So that just in case there's anything that happens, we don't have to start digging up their foundation. That being said, I believe that covers everything to date. And I didn't want to go into too much detail, but if you have any questions, we have any.
What's up, the board?
Well, I don't have any questions, but just by way of disclosure, I'm a member of the Building and Realty Institute that submitted a letter of support. I work very closely with Tim Bowling. One of the reasons I'm a member is because I believe in creating more housing here in Westchester, especially housing that's transit-oriented development, which this project is. So live on the waterfront. I'm always amazed by how little is going on there. I think this is a great project. And while we're going forward, I mean, I think we need to do our job. I hope we do our job in the spirit of moving this project along, because I think it's something great work that will have something in for Westchester.
I have a question. not really that familiar with the site. So what is the existing street infrastructure and will you need to build a new street or how is that going to work out with
Essentially-
coordination?
So right now, it's an existing access easement. That's kind of, it's not really a formal roadway that this is the site. That provides access to the auto body shop and the plumbing shop, and eventually comes around our property to provide the access to the M2. We're actually going to raise that up a little bit. We're gonna realign it. So we are gonna be redoing that entire roadway. That's gonna provide a much better scenario than what's there right now. If I don't know if you've been out there recently, but it's definitely with lots of potholes and a lot of cars. So it doesn't look super great. We're looking to define that, make it more of a corridor that flows to the back, providing a 4-foot walkway along the entire length of one side so we can provide access to the train so that everybody can walk through, and then obviously provide access for anybody in the community who wants to come across and then visit the site, go through to the preserve and everything as well.
I think that highlights a couple of issues, maybe some doors.
No, I was gonna say Karen would be able to provide you a little bit more information on like some of the easement agreements and stuff like that that are gonna be necessary.
Yeah, and that was I was gonna go, that touches on two things, the easement question, I think just in general, also the frontage and how that road relates to the actual field. If there is any street frontage, I guess that's something that's come up during this discussion of this project, this board should understand a little bit better. But maybe Karen, you could just start off by just, if there's anything that we should be thinking about just in terms of the various easements that are required for this project work
Right.
in place.
So under the prior iteration of this project, there were numerous easements required for, utilities and whatnot, but also for the realignment and the improvement of the access road. And I understand that was a condition of the previously approved street frontage variances. So we are just requesting that the applicant submit any and all copies of any easements for the project, but specifically in reference to the access road so we can see, what has already been signed off on versus what's still outstanding. And that was also a condition that was highlighted in Valerie's memo as well. But this will require a variance from the zoning board. It's a variance from village law because the project does not have enough frontage on a public street.
Right, so the project is really just this access road, right?
Correct.
I know, Tony, maybe both Tony and Valerie, you guys have long memos. I think just as we're kind of kicking off on this conversation, since we're talking to Gary, Tony, I'll let you kind of go first. There are other issues that we've already highlighted, just from an engineering perspective, things that we should be paying special attention to.
I'll go first. Yeah, we didn't fully have a chance to do a full deep dive into this yet, being the size of the project. We had a few people out, but I know that some of the access road issues of raising it had something to do with the fire department access and flooding. So we're going to kind of look back at our old memos on all that and the heights and the levels and all those meetings.
And that was another, we did raise the driveway was raised, so it's above the base flood elevation, so that it's going to be maintained. And the building actually is raised up as well, so that they can get in and out of there if there's any flooding.
I recognize this is. And then, just kind of like working my own. Working my way through your presentation and kind of what we've looked at so far. Like the fact that like half of what you were talking about, we're talking about the culvert, we're talking about the retention pond. This kind of green route to kind of manage water, water management seems to be like so critical to this. And obviously in that area, I'm not like tonight, we're all like wondering if we're gonna have to swim home. So it's just I think something to think about. And obviously Tony will be looking to you just for kind of like understanding how that works. But as the site plan develops, I can imagine that's something we'll pay a lot of attention to.
We'll do a deep dive into the stormwater review as well. Yeah.
Other comments and thoughts. I know we're and then maybe Valerie, I'll ask you just to reiterate, which I think has already been put out there, just the process of this stuff, because there's a lot of steps. as the applicant's already acknowledged, that this will have to go through to reach the end.
Can you just run through what the four variances are, again, there's parking with frontage, period.
The building length isn't, it's width, building width is the other one. So, frontage, building width. Let's go look at the notes.
So parking.
Maybe a buffer.
And then, yeah, there's a 25-foot setback from the body of water. We approach into that.
Is the building width is it the building width relative to is it the viewport width relative to the river, or is that not? If it doesn't ring a bell, then it's probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, yeah, maybe Valerie, maybe this would be a good opportunity just to kind of. Give break for orders.
I think in terms of this board, you're gonna be providing site plan approval, conditional use approval, and also, BAR approval. The village board will have to get special use approval, and we'll have to get them in front of the village board probably shortly, just to give an initial presentation, to this project again. They will also need, from this board, wetlands permit and tree removal permit. Both wetlands and tree removal will require recommendations from the Environmental Advisory Committee. So, or the Environmental Advisory Council. So once, and I'm gonna say, once we're calling it a complete application, but once we have enough information on the wetlands and the tree removal, and this board feels comfortable with the, site plan, then we can refer it over to the EAC for their recommendation. And then ultimately, you'll need to refer this over to the zoning board of appeals for their review of the variances. And typically, like as we've done prior applications, once you feel comfortable with the site plan and you feel that, things are going in the generally good direction, then you can refer it over to them. Also, in terms of other state agencies and federal agencies, this will require, New York State DEC, speedy permit for stormwater, Army Corps of Engineers for the nationwide permit, Metro North for the entry permit, and then Westchester County Department of Health. And then also a referral to Westchester County.
Other board questions before we open up the public hearing on the application?
So Valerie, isn't that basically like an introductory meeting?
Yes, that's really what it is. We need not to do a deep dive into the site plan issues. I mean, I understand that a lot of the site plan issues were dealt with the first rounds, but things have changed since then, and so we'll just be looking at the plans themselves to see if there's anything else that needs to be done.
Like, I think this, for instance, there was no wetland law in the village when this application was last year. So I mean, that's a big example, because that's a big impact on this project. But there are others. The tree permit law has also changed. So the order's changed. So there are things in there.
And Mr. Chairman, we acknowledge that, and we're happy to deal with all of it.
100%. And you brought it up in your presentation. Kind of where it's probably, where it's with you guys. Okay, so if there are no other board questions right now, can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
For sure. Second.
Any objections? Or none? We're now in the public hearing. Is there anybody in the room here tonight who would like to speak to this application? Don't see anybody. Is there anybody in the Zoom waiting room? Oh, I do see somebody. I'm sorry. Sorry. No. Come on up. Just introduce yourself and play the president.
Yeah, Ossining 2018, similar to Richard, part of the real estate agent, and one part of the Institute of Real Estate Management. And one day in one of the meetings, I had a conversation about how great Ossining is, the waterfront and all that. And during that discussion, one of the members, Nick, taught us our ethics class at the State Institute of Management. We went over project, looked at the project. I'm also a property manager for Barchester, the Bronx. So I've done a lot of projects with engineers. As I was looking at it, I was like, that probably brings a lot of value to town. So after explaining how long this took in the pandemic and all the delays, I was like, you know what? There you guys present, I'll like to say a few words. So I think with careful review, obviously you guys look like a very thorough board. And can, if it's better, if it's good for the town, I believe that it's worth looking at and just giving it an opportunity.
Thank you very much.
And would you be so kind as to sign, so
Sure.
rest of the
You too. Thank you, Joyce.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can say something else?
So I was just gonna remind folks, maybe this is your first time in the room, this owl is not playing our meeting tonight, I have nothing to do with it. But he's very, very sensitive, so any rustling that you do, any side conversations, he's going to pick up and record. In this transcript, so just, if you have to have a conversation, all good, please just move on down the hall. Okay?
Thank you. I will now check in. Was there anybody in the Zoom waiting room who would like to speak to this application? And if so, you can use the hand raise function.
We have several folks, no hands.
Okay, no hands. Well, that's fine. There will be other opportunities. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Clarence, motion to adjourn the public hearing. Will be a second motion.
All right, any objections to that? See any, motion carries, public hearing is adjourned. So just before we just adjourn this application for tonight, is there any other questions or comments either from the board or any question directed to staff? Are there any questions that haven't been asked, should be asked at this point? Good. Can I have a motion to adjourn the application?
Which one, motion to adjourn?
Clarence, second.
Any objections to that? Very none. Thanks guys very much. We look forward to see how the project develops. All right. That was our only new business, right? So next up, we're moving on to continuing business. Give everybody a moment to set up. Thank you. Good night. All right, so next up we have 159 Main Street, and this is the second time this application has been before us. This is for site plan conditional use, VAR, the owl here, parking in lieu of payment in lieu of parking, we will all for adult use cannabis dispensary. So JD, you're here to speak this on tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, so, yeah, maybe you can start.
Harley?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move.
Okay, I'll probably do that. The virtual attendee. All right, yeah, so just a quick update, what's happened since, what's been developed, in response to our comments during our last meeting. We talked a little bit about the site plan and operations, talked about the AR, and I know that you've been to the HPC since the last time you were here. Then maybe we can put those former HPC drawings up, and just for new members here, typically, while we are the VAR, the Board of Architectural Review for the village, the projects that overlap HPC. This board tends to be pretty deferential to HPC because it's a more in-depth detailed review.
Tell me, JB.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, so since last time we were in front of your board, Charlie the partner, they did a presentation and how the business will be run. Also, we went to some of the comments from Tony Wallenby. And we also provided the opening plan and the security plan. Also, when we got the certificate for the fund for the work and the elevation. Everything else is unchanged. At this time, we did it. I think there were some questions about the security and Charles talk about that. The for the items, I think they were open order.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And that, yeah. That's, yeah, but I'm sorry, looking at those elevations, I think one of these we asked about was just because it was hard for us to understand what was actually changing. I know that you guys are, so that you're still showing the previously approved, which is a little ambiguous to us. That said, I think that this has been reviewed.
Yeah.
Been reviewed by HPC, so I'm not gonna, I'm thinking, and,
That was both and that's.
yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, that's fine. So, all right, so maybe we can bring in, I'm sorry, who's the other member of your team that's here?
Charlie is over as a panelist, so Charlie, we can see you, but we can't hear you, so if you wouldn't mind unmuting.
Sure, happy to. I apologize for not being there this evening, but of course, you know, the storms, my neighborhood happens to be prone to flooding, so I decided to stay home, but happy to be with you and answer any questions.
Great, so can you maybe just talk a little bit about some of the clarifications that were made related to security, and I think I'll go on the site plan as well, right? Loading, unloading, there was some clarification of what was happening in the back, like there's like on the back side of the lot as opposed to Main Street.
We showed the typical loading area in the back, but most of the delivery gonna be being done in the front room. It's a small car or a small vehicle.
Can we maybe see how that's gonna work and what's the, I guess it'd be helpful to understand the, you know, how the back of that lot, or the back of the entrance is used, how the front entrance is used. And just how security will be kind of maintained with those two entrances.
Is there somewhere else I wanna be, or is this it?
I think that's probably the right one.
Yeah.
Because I saw this drawing, I saw that we're back on Leonard Street, which I guess that's pretty, because the entrance is on grade on Main, right? So on Leonard Street, you're probably like a story and a half down or a story down.
It's not, it's not that bad, it's like, for one flight is there.
Okay.
There. But most of the deliveries, I think it's a couple times a week. Again, Charles can speak to that, but it's gonna be done in, I believe, minivans or, small vehicles. It's going to be something that we have, big trucks when it's in, delivering in the place. So there are 2 points of security, one on the front and the back.
Okay, I'm just noting, sorry for the record, this is the site plan and it's referring to loading in the back, so which is different from Main Street. I think it's much more appropriate the way you have it here. I think we all know.
Right, I mean, I guess what I meant is that it's a small vehicle, so it can be done in the front or the back. So if that's the loading area, that's where,
Right,
it'll be done.
yeah, this site plan and it's showing the back, that's just
Yeah.
pointed that out. I know Charlie,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, can I just ask quickly, Mr. Hernandez, does this take into consideration where the parking garage is gonna be? Like how, I'm trying to place in my mind how close this storefront back is going to be to the parking garage, and will you have the width to really have a loading area there?
Yes, I believe the loading, the garage is, all, I mean,
is there, maybe look at a Google Earth image?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing for the trash pickup, it wasn't clear where the trash is being picked up as well.
Well, right now, I think the garage, there's a small container underneath the stairs in the back.
Right, I mean, this is, right, but we're dealing with product that theoretically people would be,
But is there a difference, doesn't the state law mandate how?
well, I mean,
product-
we usually ask that
Yeah.
question, but we don't, I mean, it would be good to get an answer.
Yeah.
On how you're dealing with.
I know Charlie has a better answer for that in terms of removal, trash pickup and how product containing trash versus kind of ordinary
Yeah.
business trash is segregated and removed. Charlie, I don't know if you understood that. That was kind of a question for you.
Yeah, no, I think I'm following you, and let me try to answer, and if I don't answer, then certainly I'll try to clarify. In terms of trash pickup, we're going to be using the same trash that our landlords, the Lozanos, are using. I don't know exactly where their bins are, but there is space under the stairs on the back on the Leonard Street side. We're not generating a lot of trash here, certainly, but we will find the position for that. And as it stands now, it is at that back staircase. In terms of product, any product that is being destroyed will be destroyed in-house. I don't know that we're going to separate it necessarily, but this is not something, I mean, generally, it's very much the way liquor runs. If you have product that is being destroyed or that is being returned, that goes back to the vendor, and the vendor is going to handle the destruction of that. Much the same way, if you get a bottle of wine that's corked, that goes back to the distributor that the store bought it from. They pick it up with their next delivery, they take it away and destroy it. So we're not going to be in a situation where there's a lot of cannabis product that's just going into general public trash. That should not be a concern of the board. In terms of deliveries, we expect that deliveries will initially be done mostly through the Main Street entrance. We expect that's where the majority of our traffic will be until such time as the parking garage comes online. And at that point, we expect that the Leonard Street side will then have more traffic, and we may take deliveries through that side. As JB was referencing, deliveries are done in a small van. They have large plastic containers that are zip tied closed. They come in, they cut the zip ties, we open, we go through an invoice, we accept product, they take it away. But it's not, it's not like a liquor delivery where you've got a large truck and a dolly and several cases coming in, anything like that. This is all on a much smaller scale, so we don't expect that it will disrupt the flow of pedestrians on either side of the street. It's not a large truck that's going to be blocking traffic on either side. Nothing like that should be a concern to you. Does that answer the question that's been asked?
I think it does. I mean, when you're talking about deliveries, and I see, I think there's a lot of follow-up questions here in a second. I just want to ask for a point of clarification. You're saying deliveries. Are you talking about deliveries of product to the store, or are you talking about deliveries? I mean, I don't know if there's a home delivery component to this operation, or are you talking about both?
I'm referring to, well, I guess both. I was referring to deliveries of product coming to the store. We expect we will be doing home deliveries as allowed under the law, and we will have a service that handles that and takes those out, and those will all be tracked. There's a very specific state tracking service that all New York State dispensaries have to comply with, that tracks all products coming into the store, going out of the store, and we will be in full compliance with all of those requirements.
Okay, I want to open this up to the board for, so if there's some questions here.
Well, I'm sort of repeating what Maddie asked. I'm having a really hard time visualizing the rear of the property and how deliveries would be made, especially once the parking garage opens. And I'm assuming, I haven't seen the plans for the parking garage, but I'm assuming that there's still, that road is still the access into the parking garage.
Yeah, you can see my cursor, right?
Yeah.
So folks are still gonna come in off of Brandreth, and generally this is where they're gonna turn into the parking garage. My concern, and I know the building is over here, my concern is that up here is sort of like a pedestrian plaza. So I don't know if Kellard and our village engineer, have just made sure that there's no overlap there. I would hate to, have a pedestrian plaza and then a van unloading product in the middle of all that. And perhaps this has already been considered and I'm just not aware of it, but I just sort of wanted to highlight that.
The other thing that I wanted to ask is in terms of, and maybe this question has already been answered because HPC is signed off, but in terms of the lighting and the signage in the front, is what we're looking at, it's not clear to me that what the lighting is, and I think it is the existing lighting, and this has all been approved by HPC, what we're seeing there.
I don't know if that's to me or to JB. Yes, ma'am, that has been approved by HPC.
No,
Okay, yeah, JB nodded his head.
Okay, sorry.
I was trying to do other word.
But so I guess the parking structure is kind of like, we put the site plan vote back over there, because then I think we have to understand the site plan in the context of the parking lot, because it's already almost built. I don't know when it comes online, but it's October, right, which is like tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, understanding what the applicant is saying, that there would be, that a car or a van that is sized to fit, front into the existing diagonal spots on Main Street. Sounds like that might be safer and better than back towards a pedestrian plaza, as Maddie pointed out.
And I don't know if Charles can speak to that, but I don't know. This is not something more like, to be parked there for half an hour, like, where you expect that with that big deliveries, right? Somebody doing deliveries and we occupying the space, shorter than 15 minutes.
So I guess just a couple of the questions and I don't know if say a Taryn question or a Valerie question, but can we on the site plan, I think we've talked about this before in other applications like this, limiting the size of delivery vehicles. To vehicle that can lawfully fit in the diagonal parking on Main Street.
I'm gonna say yes. Karen, would you agree?
I think that would be a reasonable condition, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is that something that's feasible for the applicant to institute? Like, can you commit to having, vehicles that can fit in ordinary parking spaces on Main Street?
Yeah, I don't expect that to be a problem at all. We expect to be working with pretty small, obviously New York State producers, none of whom are driving large trucks. Certainly they'll fit into the diagonal spaces on Main Street. And if for some reason it becomes a problem or there is any sort of congestion on Leonard, then we can just instruct them to actually pull into the garage and then carry a product across and up the back that way so that they're not leaving their vehicle on Leonard. My expectation is that it's not an issue. As I've been watching the parking garage coming together, there have been several times where large, construction vehicles have been parked there and traffic has still been able to flow. And we're certainly talking about our delivery vehicles being smaller than that. But if for some reason down the road this became an issue, then we would just instruct our vendors to pull into the parking garage and walk things across the street.
Are there no stopping or standing restrictions on that portion of Leonard, or if there aren't, will there
I'm
be?
not sure how much access is gonna be needed up the road. I don't believe that I've been moved into that,
Okay,
degree of granularity, but, just something that popped up that I thought.
it just makes our site plan review really hard here, not knowing those pieces. Yeah.
I'm sorry, just real quick, if my memory serves me correct, there's the parking lot that's behind the residential building. Is there space there for access to this building?
I mean, it's privately owned property, that's 147 Main Street.
Right.
I believe they're pretty well subscribed and who's using those parking spaces, so I'm not sure. Tony, I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with Paul about this, or perhaps it just didn't come up.
No, I didn't. No. Yeah,
But it will take
it's certainly something I can do.
Park.
It just seems,
Small vehicles are gonna run.
it just seems to me that, I don't know, maybe the thought of like parking in the parking garage and then carrying the product over to the store doesn't seem too secured, right? But maybe I'm being overly cautious. I don't know.
Does the state law have anything to say about that? Sorry, Taryn?
Just to clarify with the applicant, your intention is to have deliveries, outside of business hours, correct?
No, not necessarily.
So you anticipate deliveries being made to the store during normal business hours?
I anticipate that being potential. Yeah, obviously we would want to do it earlier or later, but I can't tell you for sure that they're not going to deliver while we're open. We would certainly accept while we're open. I think that really depends on the delivery route of the particular truck on a given day.
Okay.
And
This isn't the final, but perhaps this will.
So then I think at this point, then I think you have the choice but to put a restriction on the limit the size of the truck pool parking space that can be parked along Main Street.
yeah,
Right, and then if the applicant so chooses to have something in the parking garage and street, that's their desk.
But can I just ask a question as a plan? So let's say we have that restriction, you get money for the truck, who's gonna know?
Right, well, the building department would notice, right, and if there's an issue with truck parking spaces being blocked, then it would be a violation of the.
Right. Do you see where I mean here? So this is where my cursor had been prior. So, Michael, this is 147 Main Street. This is our private parking lot. And I think this is the building, where you're at. So the
Yes.
loading zone from the site plan would be like here-ish. So it's possible, but I don't know if those have been marked as parking spaces or if that's considered to be just pedestrian from that point forward. I don't believe you're supposed to drive past this
There's not an
area
actual
unless you're.
polling into that building, there's not a spot where they can. They have to be on Leonard.
There's parking spots here and here, so maybe that's the farthest that it goes.
Is that reflected in your site plan, JB?
No,
So your site plan is showing that box along,
yes,
um,
I don't, there is,
but then what is also the trash removal for that entire building, is that the trash removal is occurring at the,
there are
there.
the buildings, and this is the building.
Fair enough, right? This building's we're talking, yeah.
Yeah, I might be making a mountain out of a molehill, I just wanna make sure that we're aware of the fact that, you know, it looks a bit different today than it will look in.
Okay, well, let me just like, let me zoom out for a second, because we spent a lot of time talking about this, I wanna bring this up to conclusion, we also public hearing on this, but, we identified an issue with loading and unloading, I think that I haven't heard anybody objecting to the concept of, as long as it's a small enough vehicle pulling in on Main Street, and car parking on Main Street, the cars parking on Main Street, and walking. The product, I think we also all know Main Street, that wanting to park right in front of the store is a very lucky handful, right? If you get there, you might block that block. As long as that's reasonable, that seems like the business can operate that way. I don't want to perseverate on what may or may not happen on the back of the building with the lot. I think that the relevance of that question, I guess, is what will happen ultimately to this building. JD pointed out all the buildings back there, in terms of how they use the backs of the buildings, trash removal. Maybe it's a moot point, and if it does become an issue, it's an issue for everybody. It's, yeah, I think outside of time. So this particular site plan, this site plan works for how the project is laid out right now. So, does anybody, I mean, does everyone follow? It makes sense. So we, even from that perspective, I think we could have a condition that the site plan is updated to show the, the entrance on the front of on the Main Street side, restriction on the vehicle sizes, and then move forward that way. I think talked a little bit last time about hours of operation. I want to make sure we're clear on that. I want to make sure we're clear. I think there was an opening plan that was submitted. I think I read through that a little bit. I think you talked a little bit about like the marketing component of that. I think it's less relevant, not relevant to this board. I think what's relevant to this board is just traffic control and crowd control. That may be less of an issue now than it might have been. This was a new institution, but certainly not the first store like this in built. So any board member have any questions on that? JB, can you just or Carly just reiterate where we stand with hours of operation on this? I'm sure we're looking at that here.
I think those were clarifying that was saying men's front in one of the program, yeah, was the preparation or Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10, Friday to Saturday, 9 to 10, 9 to 11, and Sunday 10 to 9.
And I don't know if there's maybe these are all consistent with New York State law, and I guess it just has to, the state law just says it has to adhere to the village laws for this type of establishment, which how do we?
You have to have a minimum of 70 hours that needs to be opened, and I believe state law doesn't allow from like well, 8 o'clock in the morning is the earliest you can open, and I forget what time it closes. Do you remember time?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
After midnight or something? It's getting way past the time that they're closed.
Okay, so we're comfortable that these hours are consistent with both village and state regulations. I mean, that's true. Okay.
We plan to report.
Right. Compliance in part, yeah. Any other board questions on this before we go to public hearing? Right, the motion to reopen the public hearing on the application.
Lawrence, the motion to reopen the public hearing.
Richard Bonus, sorry, any objections to that? Is there anybody here, we're now in a public hearing, is there anybody here to speak to this application tonight? I don't see anybody, is there anybody in the waiting room, you can use the hand raise function, and I will point out that Maddie is shaking her head, no, that there is nobody.
We got one person, but no hands.
Okay, one person, no hands. Hands are what matters. Okay, so do we have what we need? I think we've looked at all the angles of this at this point. I think we asked kind of some important questions tonight. We identified some conditions, any other kind of concerns before we move forward? Right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, to close the public hearing?
There's a motion first.
Chris Klein, second.
All right, any objections to that? I don't see any, the public hearing is closed. So I think we just articulated, is it 2 conditions really?
Yeah, the site plan shall be updated to show deliveries on the front, from the front, and the size of the truck will be limited to the size of the parking spaces on Main Street.
All right. Anything else to add? If not, we have a motion from the board to approve the application.
Valerie, do we have to be specific that it's one parking space, the size of one parking space?
Oh, yeah, I should probably, yeah, thank you.
Well, it's good we have a lawyer on board.
It's always good to have a lawyer.
All right, can I have a motion from the board to approve the application?
I make a motion to approve the application.
And then,
Yes, second motion.
all right, and we will do a roll call.
Okay. Pam Nelson. Aye. Carl Thurston. Aye. Michael Bevino.
Aye.
Carla Elliott. Aye. Michael Erickson. Aye. Richard Klein.
Aye.
And Chair Roy.
Aye. Very good, motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thanks, JB. Okay, so we will move forward. All right, next up on the agenda, we have 81 Croton Avenue. And this is something we looked at a couple of months ago. This is a site plan and conditional use approval with Westchester Ballet Company, who's the applicant.
Don't see the applicants. Have one attendee, but I'm not sure if they're related to any application. So if you, attendee are related to the 81 Croton Avenue, Westchester Ballet Company application, would you please raise your hand?
No? Okay, so let's table that for now. Circle it, and I will just ask you, Maddie, to remind me when we get back to the end of our continuing business to check in on this one. Okay, so next up is 34 State Street. Okay, so 34 State, and I guess you'll recuse yourself in this one, Michael. We don't make us. All right, so I guess, so at this point, you know, I don't know the best way to, I think we've already worked our way through secret on the application. I know it's gone through every hurdle, it's gone through zoning. And I think it's right now currently with the BOT, right, on the
Yes.
on the condition, basically not conditions, it's on the special permit. So I think the really tonight, and I don't know, I guess the applicant's not here, but the just kind of going through the list of, I guess.
Director here. Thank you.
A list of conditions, just to understand the list of the conditions that would be kind of in place where we're voting right now, both just so that the applicant has clarity, and also just so board members here have clarity, can ask any questions, before this would come back to the board for a, presumably a final review at our next board. So
I have, my conditions, and Tony also, Tony, do you want me to highlight? Do you want to read yours, or do you want me to, I have your memo.
Whatever's easier. I kind of have bullet points.
Okay, perfect. So then I'll just read mine, and then, Tony will read his, and then clearly a couple of them might overlap, and we'll clean that all up before next month, and that way next month we'll read through all the conditions.
okay, so it'll be a public list, and then I'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our conditions are gonna specifically focus on before site plan sign off. Before site plan approval, we are gonna need the board to decide whether to accept the applicant's proposed on-site passive recreation pool, Breakneck Hill footpath improvements and Hunter Street Pocket Park. And State Street regrading as satisfying the payment in lieu of parkland. So that's one of the conditions you will need to, and that's a findings you're gonna need to make next month, and then we'll make that a condition of approval that all those elements need to be worked into the site plan. That the trash will need to, make sure that it's a rear loading trash truck only, because that's the only way it really appropriately accesses the site. Outdoor lighting, the applicant is proposing that their lighting plan will be dark sky compliant, so we're gonna also make sure that that is correct. And then the view corridor presentation, preservation, you're gonna also need to make a findings to waive that section where it specifically has the width of the buildings, right? So that's something that this board has already talked about in the past that you're willing to waive, but that's gonna be a findings as well.
So that gets fit in as a condition.
Well, it's gonna be a findings, and then we're just gonna make sure that the current, like, the current heights and widths of the building doesn't vary, and if they do, they'll clearly need to come back for any sort of additional approval.
Okay, so
Right, it's just gonna be clear that, you know, that they have provided you with the information, and that as part of that condition of approval is that these elements were specifically provided and have been incorporated into the site plan, so
Got it.
those cannot, you know, vary. Also, in terms of site plan elements before issuing the building permit, any proposed easements, deed restrictions, covenants, all of that will need to be provided. Blasting and rock removal plan, if they are required to do any blasting and rock removal, that will have to be provided and reviewed by the planning board's engineering consultant. Then also construction logistics narrative, that should also be reviewed by the engineer prior to issuance of building permit. The Smith Robinson House final restoration plan, again, that should be provided to us, and then also potentially reviewed, just to make sure that that's also will be, like, we want to just make sure that their plan does, you know, will actually create the restoration of the Smith Robinson House, you know. In terms of retaining wall color and material, that will need to be finalized as well. And then also brownfield cleanup documentation that we should be able to, we'll ask for more information from the applicant to submit that. And then the other couple things are sewer, and this is what we call I&I, which is just infiltration, mitigation, cleaning, and it's what they call, it's an acronym CCTV, which is basically surveying the inspection of the sewer line along James Street, from State Street to Hunter Street. And then landscape maintenance plan, having them provide that so that there's a 5-year maintenance plan, and then stormwater maintenance agreement that the applicant will also enter into a stormwater maintenance agreement. And then affordable housing, where again, the applicant is proposing the affordable housing already on site, but we're going to then make that as a condition that they have to make sure that the affordable housing does get provided on site.
Okay.
Those are our conditions.
All right,
Just a few.
Yeah, just to clear now, Tony.
Tony.
Now my turn. Some of them, as Valerie mentioned, might be an overlap, but one thing is to address all the traffic consultants and comments. There was still a few minor outstanding comments. Finalize the offsite improvement details with our office and the village engineer. They put together a good plan. We just gotta nail down the fine tuning. Westchester County Department of Health approval for the water and sewer. As Valerie mentioned, the I&I improvements. So, you know, we'll meet with them, the village engineer, and come up with a plan there. The details on the walls and filing a notice intent with the DEC prior to any construction. And then prior to a CO, they're going to have to file a notice of termination.
Any questions on this from the board?
Yeah.
Yes. Great.
I'm pretty sure you answered this question for me before, but can you just explain with respect to the affordable housing requirements? Is that travel in perpetuity with the property, or what is the sort of the governing restrictions with respect to maintaining the number of affordable units?
For this particular project, it's going to run with the government program that this affordable housing development is going under through HCR.
But does that have like a 20-year
I
restriction?
believe that-
believe something like that.
And that is, I think it's 40 years.
Okay, I can look at them.
I don't wanna, let me get back to you on that, but I believe it's somewhere in like 40 years.
Okay. And then my other question.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Michael, yeah, so, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, thank you.
40. My other question has to do with the recreation plan, and I feel a little fuzzy about where we ended up in terms of community input, response, approval to what's being proposed.
Okay, so what's being proposed right now is, they're proposing, first of all, the trail down Breakneck Hill, right? So that's one of the components. The second component is a pocket park at the rear of Hunter Street. And if the board wants to refine that a little bit more with the applicant, we can make sure that the applicant is ready to, have that discussion next month. Then there's also going to be regrading on State Street so that you will actually have like an area for people to recreate if they choose to. There's also on site, there's tables and passive recreation being provided as well as a pool. And I think that's it. Is there anything?
That's it.
What's that? Okay.
And was there sort of an official, I don't know, I can't remember who the applicant was meeting with in terms of community representation, but was there a sign off from community representation in terms of what was being proposed?
Well, there wouldn't be necessarily there was community outreach done. They did meet with people within the neighborhood. In terms of like final approvals and final decisions, that's this board.
Okay.
Were there also improvements potentially proposed to the, like, I don't know if it was the house fronts along the perpendicular road straight to State Street, I'm blanking on it now. On James, was there, maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought there were conversations with the James Street residents and potential, I don't know if it was improvements, I thought there were potential improvements on those front yards.
I think the conversations with James Street was that their concern was actually having an entrance onto James Street.
Okay.
So they reworked the driveway so that the entrance and exit is off the state.
That must be what I was looking for. Okay. Just you made me think of it perhaps because I know there's conversation about that kind of.
Right, there will be sidewalks and right, that
Yeah,
will be provided and they'll be doing landscaping. But in terms of like actual like public recreation, it won't be on the
Okay,
street.
just be infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So the process is when the applicant comes to the next meeting, we would be in the position of discussing the conditions with them.
Yes, and I can have them prepared to kind of run through the recreation piece again, especially the what they're proposing along Hunter Street.
Be great.
That sounds good. Okay. Any other questions, guys? I'm just gonna, this is on the agenda, can I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Which one will be the phone?
Any objections?
Is that Rick's and one?
No, George, no.
Okay, thank you.
And there were no objections that I saw, so we're now in public hearings. Is there anybody here to speak to the application? I don't see anybody in the room. Is there anybody in the waiting room?
One person, no hands.
No, one person, no hands, okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing? All, is there, so,
So that was Holly and Michael?
yeah,
Okay.
okay, motion to adjourn the application. For the evening.
We have motion to adjourn this application. I second.
All right, any objections to that? Then, the application is adjourned. Michael, welcome back.
Sorry, I didn't show you the later.
Okay, next up, we have, 209, 211 Main Street. This is a return, as a look at site plan conditional use, payment new list of VAR, other items here. So it's been a minute, I think, since, well, it's been a couple, maybe one or two. I guess really today, I know there's some changes that have been made to the project since the last time we saw it, so maybe let's start off by highlighting what those changes are, how they impact the project, I think specifically in terms of parking. Which I think is really the focus of your work since last time we saw you. And I guess as you talk about that, please go into the parking study that you have commissioned, which we all had a chance to take a look at. And then I think the board can have a conversation about that parking study and the kind of updated request that you guys are.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Cordon with JMC. We are the site engineers working on the project. I've been in front of you guys a couple of times now. So basically our projects, we've kind of revamped it a little bit. We've gone through things, restructured the building. Previously, we had some residential units on the first floor. We've removed those residential units from the first floor. We've gone from a total of 16 residential units and we dropped that number down to 10. When we originally presented to the board, we had let's talk about the reduction of parking spaces. By the reduction of parking spaces, by reducing the units from 16 down to the 10 spaces, that's provided us the ability to reduce the number of parking spaces that are required from 34 that were previously required by the zoning code down to 31. That's one of the first things that we did. The other thing, by moving the use of the residential use from the first floor, it's a little bit more in compliance with the zoning. We understand that we are still going to need a conditional use permit, but we're not necessarily going to need a use for, not a use, but an area variance for that. So JMC, we've gone through here, we'll talk to the parking because I think that's the biggest thing. Is we've worked through, we looked at the parking, we analyzed the parking based upon the institution, Institute of Transportation Engineers. They produce a generation table, or a generation book. It's a thick book. And what that book does is that basically says, over these hours, this is where your demands are going to be for parking. Generally speaking, your parking for the residential uses are going to be an overnight use on weekends. It's not necessarily going to have heavy use during the day. During the day, our heavier uses are going to be the commercial uses and the office uses that are going to be associated on the first floor of the building. In taking into account all this different information, different tables that are available in this book, we've determined and we've outlined that in the parking study that we've prepared. We've analyzed that and threw those numbers in there, and we've determined that the peak number of parking spaces that are going to be required for this application is going to be 19. Because that's when you're gonna have the most amount of people that are at home, and using your the commercial and the office. They provided us a time of the demand of 19 spaces. I believe it was around 3:30, 4 o'clock PM. When we're gonna need that heavy demand. With that, oh, I'm sorry. It's gonna be from 12 to 12:30 and from 2 to 2:30 on a weekdays. That demand, that's when we're gonna need a total of 19 spaces to support the development. Now we have 17 spaces that we're proposing underneath the building that are gonna be available for use for all the tenants of the building, all the visitors to the building. And then, as you guys might understand, we do have a municipal lot that's behind us that has a number of parking spaces that are not gonna say necessarily available. There's a number of parking spaces that are there to support the community. Right now, there's a total of, I believe sorry, I haven't seen that number. We're increasing the number of parking spaces that are back there by 2, by restriping the lot, restructuring the lot, meeting things up a little bit. That's all been done in discussions where, the work is proposed in accordance with discussions that the applicants had with the town engineer, the village engineer, Paul Bradley, and the village consulting engineer to figure out. So what we would like to do is we would like to take the credit for those 2 parking spaces, which gives us a balance of 19 spaces that we are providing. This is, this is a reduction from the originally requested 34 spaces that were not necessarily requested, but from the originally proposed 34 spaces that we requested. So that's kind of where we are tonight. Is anybody reviewed the parking study? Does anybody have any questions on that? So, because that's the bulk of it we're here to discuss.
Yeah, and just specifically, again, just to the board, this relates to a provision of the code that allows us as a planning board to evaluate the different parking uses and determine if there is overlap to potentially reduce the requirement, right? So if based on his calculations, there's a need for 31 spots on the site, there's 17 provided, and and then there's, there's the 2 that he's talking about that would in the public lot that would, that would be added as a result of work that they'd be doing. But I think the question, the conversation this board is looking at that parking study and kind of understanding the kind of the real life implications, kind of worst case scenarios in terms of what would be reasonable to say, based on the, these kind of ground floor office retail, as opposed to the residential needs. I mean, you scroll up, because I actually did have a couple of things. I thought I read it a little bit differently. Like when I was reading through the report, I felt like if I was looking at the worst case, kind of looking at this from a worst case condition, maybe not an average, maybe that's the difference. Go up a little bit further, sorry, down, because
Are you looking for the charts?
maybe page 3. No, it was actually, this is the charts kind of include the same 2 spots that you're describing. But sorry, maybe down one more page. Stop, let me just look at that. Right, that there were, maybe I was misreading it, but I was looking at this in terms of, when I was overlapping, like the kind of the worst case resident, the peak residential and the peak commercial, there was always a range. So if I was like looking at the high end of those 2 ranges, I was getting like closer to like 6 spots, not 2. And maybe I was misreading it, but.
So what the parking occupancy counts are, these parking occupancy counts are based off of actual visits, and observations that we had guys make on the site to observe how many of those spaces in that municipal lot were available in these different times. To demonstrate the fact that if we do have an overlap, there could be a few additional spaces, the lot's not being fully utilized, is what I was trying to get.
So we're just looking at the back lot, at the public
back lot to basically give us an idea of, okay, so based upon this, there is an occupant, there is a availability of 6 spaces during this period, so,
I may have been reading it, and the numbers are very similar to the numbers that you're looking at,
it's
so
not-
it's like, I think you may have just thrown me off, I was looking at the sense
it took me a number of iterations to go through this and review this and try to make sure it's as clear as it could be for you guys, and I apologize if it's a little bit monotonous and difficult to understand.
And there will also be a new parking garage as well. Yeah,
Same area.
yeah.
It is in the same area, it's all within one distance.
With respect to the 2 parking spaces, well, 2 things, I mean, that municipal lots portion of it, you would require a parking permit, and then there are spaces available to the public for up to 3 hours. But the 2 spaces that you're envisioning being created, would those be specifically designated and targeted or saved for your property, or no?
No,
Just goes into the general availability pool? Okay.
But would it increase the 3-hour parking or the permit? Yeah, that is relevant.
I'm glad that you asked. So I'm not sure if you've had more recent conversations with the village engineer than I have, but I know particularly because we're working on the community center project right across the street. We're thinking about how we need to change the counts in that parking lot anyway, to see if we need to sort of recalibrate it to, try to put staff on the upper lot of the community center, so it frees up, parking spots in this lot. So that hasn't really been calculated yet, but 2 spaces is 2 spaces, and we'll make sure that we make good use of them.
Okay.
I think one thing though, we have to get probably, the building inspector or maybe Taryn or that we just need to. They're proposing to have one of those spaces count towards the parking on their site.
Two.
Two, I'm sorry. And that's the one thing I haven't seen in the zoning that allows for you to count that. So I don't know whether that's something that would.
Wouldn't that be something similar to a payment in lieu of parking application where instead of us paying to actually paying for the spaces, we're paying to construct the spaces and do a substantial reconstruction?
Right, and I think that's potentially something that would have to be discussed with
I
the
think
village
we have to
board.
discuss that with, with Joe and potentially Stuart as well to see if there's anything that can be done to count those spaces as a credit per se towards your pile up.
And then the other kind of question that kind of came to mind is, it's a study and, it's kind of based on theoretical numbers. I'm, I think I've said before, I think it would be amazing just, to see this project go up, and I know it's such a landlocked, anything that goes here is going to be, plagued by these same issues. So, I think you guys are asking the right questions. I think I'm glad you presented the study. I'm maybe slightly skeptical about that number of those two spots, that this magically works with that two offset.
I understand.
Yeah, no, but, and then maybe this is more of a question to staff for a second, which can we look at this and say, we don't feel that, those two additional spots are necessarily sufficiently protected. But if we take that study and put like a, double it or triple it even, right? Say, 4 or 6. I don't, we can't be arbitrary about it, so I don't know and look for advice for kind of how to better figure that out. And then, what was originally a 34, a 17 parking spot ask to the village or trustees for PLOT becomes, a 4 or 6 spot ask. Which I think is a lot more reasonable, and whether or not those 2 spots can be used as part of that request, that's, I think that's for somebody else to answer.
I think, what's the total parking space requirement for just the units alone? It's
Just the units alone is, I'm sorry. I wanna say 16. Because it's just the 10.
So that the on-site parking would be sufficient for the residential alone, that's meaningful.
That is 6 commercial, 7 office, and 18 residential, and the cumulative zoning requirement.
Oh, good.
Is that what, that's just 31?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so
Right.
6 commercial, 7 office, 18 residential.
Right.
18 residential.
So I guess my point is that, each unit in the building will have at least one spot.
Right.
Completely dedicated to them.
Can those be on the site plan designated, like overnight parking for those units only, so that,
We can easily add that. I
yeah,
would have no problem identifying 10 spaces within the parking garage as being for restaurant.
right, so one spot per unit is, yeah,
Which, yeah,
then you have 7 spots, which are,
floaters.
right,
Floaters
plus the
for
lot outside. I mean,
It is a very walkable community. Not everybody has a car, to have 1 car per unit, I think is a reasonable ask. To have, the other facet of it is, a lot of these people, they're going to work when somebody else is coming to work. So it kind of lends itself, and that's one of the reasons that we chose to restructure the park that we're building and use the building the way that we did. To have something that's gonna complement each other as opposed to things that are just gonna build and create issues.
I appreciate the parking study, because you're absolutely right, there's like that trade-off.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's not a perfect trade-off, it's not. We
Well, it's what-
100% understand that.
yeah, the commercial space then, let's say is leased by a company that wants to park overnight vehicles, and that's just.
Well, yeah, that's something that we have the ability to control.
and maybe that's something that could be in the site plan, right, there could be no, or at least limits on overnight parking for any commercial tenants. Just somewhat related, but, does anyone here have a status on the, you know, the parking diet, if this is north of the light, would this be part of that initial phase?
So we had spoken about that, I think, when this team was in front of the Board of Trustees, and again, this is sort of the narrowing of Route 9, that project. This would be square in the middle of where that's gonna be narrowed, but
Yeah.
of course, that's a good point, there's gonna be additional parking on both sides of Route 9 in that section in
Yeah.
particular.
Right. And that parking is not residential parking, that augments the commercial parking.
So we are working with our DOT, getting our DOT permit squared away. We got verbal today that our use and occupancy permit for the utilities and stuff, it's going up to New York State for the final, hopefully for the final sign off on that. Once we get that, circulate that with the board, we still haven't gotten any comments from the DOT as far as the, utility work, but I don't really anticipate much. The work here, the DOT stuff is very, very minor. We've been trying to get a hold of some of the other the village staff to get their coordination and finalize that. That's proven to be a bit of a challenge, but we're not giving up yet. As far as contacting with the emergency services as well as the village engineer to finalize all his concerns and comments.
Well, so if you need to meet, Tony can kind of coordinate that and get those final comments or that conversation going.
From the village.
We'll make sure it happens.
Please, thanks.
Yes.
We've been trying, we've been on the emails. All right.
Okay, so, I mean, it sounds like,
Well, yeah.
go ahead, you.
I think we would like to get some kind of a thought process on where you guys are with the parking. Are you guys in support, you guys in somewhat of an alignment, are we close? Or are we off base entirely?
I feel like it's a great compromise.
Okay.
I'm very supportive of this project, as Seth said, it'd be great to see something go in that space, so whatever we can do to help move it forward.
And as I said before, I appreciate the creativity and just putting that extra thought towards that study, so that makes sense.
Other board comments? I think to me, it's just a fine tuning. I think, the question about those two spots, whether, doing that striping would offset a P-lock or not, that's, maybe a question to be asked. I think where I was going before was kind of trying to understand kind of a more protective number. I appreciate Valerie's comment. I think the bottom line is making sure that there's parking for the people who live there. So I think that can be worked into the site plan. I think that you guys are kind of, right there. I know it's been struggling to get here, but I think you're in the right place.
So, I'm just trying to come up with the next steps are, I guess, we got.
I think getting clarification on, whether or not the P-lock would be required or not, is probably a big next piece. If this board would have to make a formal approval of the, and that'd be part of the site plan approval, I guess that's a question.
Right, I mean, I think there are
Not the
still.
pile-up, but
Right.
I'm just talking about, we'll talk, I want to talk about those other
Right.
questions, but just from a parking perspective, if we were to waive the 31 spots down to the provided 17 plus.
There is the section in the code in which you have the ability, let me just.
And he actually outlines it at the top of the parking study too, right?
Yeah, so you can find that what they call combined space.
Yeah.
Right, that one use, and the two uses could have shared the spaces because their peak times are not happening at the same time.
Right.
They're happening at opposite times.
Right,
So that would just be a findings in the resolution.
okay, that was the question, how is that documented, how's that administratively managed? Okay,
I'm Watch LD 107 Clement Avenue. Conversation with Paul and Tony. Tony, if you remember, all the work we're doing in the public lot, the restriping. I was under the impression that Paul said that those two spots would be counted towards what we're providing.
We didn't particularly have that conversation that I know of. We did have the conversation that he was allowing you to bring your stormwater through the lot. Doing the improvements. We're gonna have to sit down and discuss the I&I improvements. We could have that conversation again if you'd like. But yeah, that was my understanding at the time. The improvements were allowing, we're going to allow you to bring your stormwater through the lot.
Okay, so the conversation that should be had camera.
Well, yeah, because we're gonna have to have the conversation on the I&I improvements, and then we'll also work out the little minute details of the lot itself. So I think we can kind of have that discussion. I'll definitely,
Maybe it would be good to have maybe Maddie or somebody else there at that meeting too.
I think we just need to marry these conversations.
So now we'll reach out to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I mean, just as we're getting to that point now in this review, other, that we focused so much on the parking issue, I want to make sure we're not losing anything else that might.
I think a couple of things, and I'm sure this is gonna go hand in hand with Tony's comments. I mean, we had a couple questions about like just trash and but really, I think, and lighting, but I think the big thing is like some of a little bit more on the retaining walls and then also the structural stability of the neighboring, like the neighboring buildings and the construction of the project itself. And so I'll turn it over to Tony because he's probably been dealing with that more.
yeah, no, that's definitely something we've kind of had in our memo from the beginning. Definitely need to make sure that the two buildings on either side are protected during the excavation. So we're going to want to see a shoring, protection of excavation plans, logistics, cranes, all that's going to have to be put on a plan. We want to make sure that, none of the spaces for the village are going to be affected by construction. So that's something we're going to want to see. Now, and I believe
So
the
I think we
applicant
maybe construction phasing, construction management plan.
Right.
Like that,
That's all that part of it, that's gonna be something. We're gonna need a contractor to work with us on in order to develop. That's something that's a little bit, you're gonna need a contractor that's a shoring contractor that has their own engineer. That's gonna provide kind of underpinning details or anything that's gonna be required for it. We're. Typically, that stuff is really handled under a building process, not necessarily a site plan process.
I mean, I think for us, like a study, a piece of build, just knowing that if we're approving a project, that it's not an impossible project because of the impact that it might have on adjacent structures.
I think in this particular situation, I think we raised that issue early on that's the biggest concern is how tight those buildings are. So, especially once it gets constructed.
Speak as a team on that.
Okay, any other kind of board thoughts on this? We have a motion to reopen the public hearing.
I don't know, here, motion to reopen the public hearing.
Any objections? Or none? Is there anybody in the room here to speak to this application tonight? Is there anybody on Zoom? You use the hand raise function, like speak the application. No. I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
There's a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Zoom. Sorry. Little buttons, there's not pretty interesting, but I think we know. All right, any objections? None, public hearing is adjourned. You guys good? Yep. All right, thank you very much. Just a motion to adjourn the application.
Part of you second.
Any objections to that? Okay, so we are up to 171 road, applicants here, no?
So we still have the same lonely person as our attendee.
Okay.
And I recognize and I don't see it.
Got it. Then I'm assuming then that the one, other North Avenue application, he's not here to start, it's not here.
Yes. The refuge is also next.
Got it.
They just left.
With that was one that, okay, so now we're gonna flip all the way back around to the top of the agenda. And we have, Valerie, will you give us a presentation on his zoning changes?
Okay, Taryn, it's gonna be Taryn and I will both be giving.
So,
I'm gonna be pushing
Everyone's
a few
favorite
things.
topic. Buckle up.
All right, so I'm just gonna kind of, I'm gonna provide you with an overview of proposed changes. So first, dealing with storage pods or portable storage containers. This is something that was recommended by the building department to kind of provide some regulations in terms of how long a portable storage container can remain on. So right now we're proposing limits of size of 8 feet in height, 8 feet in width, and 22 feet in length, which is your typical contractor's container, and that those containers can be there for a period of not to exceed 90 consecutive days within a 12.
Sorry, Maddie, can you put these up forward?
Yes. No, these are. Walk and chew gum over there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when you pull that up, I have you, because the first number of pages are basically taking that text and applying it to all the zoning districts where it was applied with accessory use. So Maddie, I'm gonna suggest you go down to page 17 of the local law.
No.
Page 17 starts the next section, which is penalties for offenses. And these are just strengthening civil penalties and providing this lost profit language. This is specifically requested by the Corporation Council, Stuart Pond.
The fines.
Yeah, these are the fines, and it's also increasing fines of $1,000. Then parking and loading regulations, we are proposing to remove the NC2 from the payment in lieu parking. NC2 is located along like Cortland Avenue. It's also especially has been dealing with one of the projects that you were recently dealing with. We're still dealing with 171 Cortland Avenue.
Yeah.
I think the concern from the village board is that the NC2, where those are located, it's just, there's no real public parking in the area, so it's hard to say that a payment in lieu of parking could be provided. So the payment in lieu of parking is really gonna focus on the AV Cedars Boat Center and the SPM, which is the station pausing doors. We are also proposing to allow for you to move those, allow for you to move the projects over for the village board to look at the payment in lieu of parking before like seeker is complete. It's so that you can move it forward in the process as opposed to previously.
So, you have, do a secret review.
Right now, and we'll talk about that at the end. Just kind of, update as to the secret regulations or the changes to secret regulations. Also, prohibited parking areas, specifically parking or storage of vehicles, shall not be permitted in the front yard. It's been something that's I think it's a problem, right? So
Was the.
right, well, there you go.
The small thing.
I will let the village board know that red lights are really.
So you're talking about so parking, no parking in the front yard, with the exception of driveway. So people parking on their front lawn, we know is sort of ubiquitous. It's illegal now, right? But we wanted to make it a little bit clearer in the code. Enforcement of this can be particularly challenging because the section of the code that it's in is enforced by people who don't work here at night. So trying to figure out a mechanism whereby we can help the people who are here at night enforce those violations, and make those, straight to court, basically, instead of giving them 30 days to remedy, which is what they currently have. So the next morning you wake up, you go to work, you cleared the violation. So this is the first step in what's going to be a multi-step process, but this was also mainly to give the zoning board, I believe, a little bit more instruction on when parking needed to be fit on the site. Could they put it in the front yard so long as it wasn't directly in front of the house? I'm not articulating that
No.
properly. It was always supposed to be on a driveway, but it was being interpreted by the zoning board at some point as being, if it was directly going towards the front door of the house, it was parking in the front yard, which the code prohibits. So this was sort of a creative language challenge to make sure that the zoning board had proper instruction, but it does in some part relate to this huge problem that we have with people parking on the
Cause even if you pave that spot in that front yard, the town will make, the village will make you remove that.
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, if you pave it, you still can't do it?
Cause it's blocking the house.
So a couple different things, people have tried to find creative solutions, which I don't necessarily blame them for. If you want to fit parking on your property, if you live in a neighborhood where you're not allowed to park on the street, or if you have more cars in your family than parking on your site allows. People have tried to be super creative about where they can fit parking, and even though they go through the process, which just as a reminder, you do need a permit, it's free to pave anything on your yard, we just need to know that you're doing it. Oftentimes people have taken over spots that don't actually belong to them. They either belong to their neighboring property or they belong to the village, then trying to figure out a way to back out of that when they've had that parking spot there for a very long time. It's a very layered, complicated issue, but this particular section is, I believe, to try to answer the zoning board's request for more guidance about parking on site in the front yard.
So, yes.
So that.
And then, a couple other things with parking, just making clarifications that 1 and 2 family homes can have like the entire first floor be dedicated to parking. So like, you know, if you think about a garage or, you have like, there's a lot of homes within the village where there's the garage and basically the first floor, and then it's more or less the second floor is where the house begins. This is to prevent multifamily housing, especially in mixed use districts, from potentially having just parking on the first floor and then residential uses above. So that's just clarification. And then also in terms of along the street frontage, parking will be concealed with like facade materials comparable to those used in the remainder of the building. This is for dealing with parking in terms of like that does occur like on the ground floor. And then also to the extent practical, and this is for enclosed facilities dealing with mixed use buildings that eye level fenestration with translucent but not transparent glass shall be provided. So it's just again trying to improve the aesthetics of the area. Then the other item, keep going down, so the next page is, commercial vehicles. Again, commercial vehicles are not allowed on parking on a property, except for you can have 1 commercial vehicle per dwelling unit. Maybe parked in a driveway or private garage, and there's a reference to section 250-1 of Village Code in terms of what are considered commercial vehicles.
So except for cars, vans and pickups are not exceeding 20 feet.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So there's been a lot of concern with contractors, vans and stuff like that, parking and numerous contractors, vans parking on properties.
Oh, so, okay.
Do you have a question, Mike?
Well, no, cause there is an issue, I'm just sort of unclear. If you have a single family home or a multifamily property, I mean, there are only 1 commercial vehicle per unit. Like if it's.
Or a house
so if it's a single family home, 1 commercial, if it was a multifamily.
then they can do 2, 3, 4, 5.
So, yes, so if it's a single family 1.
Somebody say.
Did somebody say that?
Taryn?
Yeah, it's the Wizard of Oz up here. Yeah, it's per dwelling unit. So if it's multiple units,
Okay. Okay.
voice of God up here.
And just to go back one, I was just a little confused. Again, it sort of relates to the difference between a 1 or 2 family versus multifamily. When you're saying parking on the first floor, I mean, we're not talking about like the 209 Main Street that's got an underground.
No, not underground,
Garage.
because the first, the ground floor is going to be, retail.
The retail, right, okay, so how would that just, the project 196 Highland Avenue where we sort of stalled with that, but it has.
Right, so there is a portion of the first floor that is is gonna be retail.
So
and-
it's still,
yeah,
so that's,
still-
It can't be all.
it can't
It
be
can't be
actually
100%
housed in the
solely.
building itself.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of, other use.
But it can be in the building, it can be on the first floor, it just can't be the entire first floor.
Okay, I'm just trying to visualize.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Even like the one on Croton Avenue, the new building, the one that was like under scaffolding.
Right, yeah.
Right, there
Right.
still is a.
There's
piece,
still,
right.
there's a storefront there, even though the majority of that is parking.
Yeah. So, because
The one next to the-
originally,
it's right from here, next to the balcony, yeah,
right,
next to the balcony.
Oh, right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, shame of being
Your favorite project.
That was,
Shame on you, Austin.
That was up there for a while, yeah. Nice little billboard.
it's because it goes with the full, text of that starts off with required parking areas may be considered within or any portion of the main building, provided the access driveway does not at any point have a grade in excess of 10%. Access drives should be placed to the intersect streets with lower pedestrian traffic and less retail frontage so as to avoid disrupting the streetscape or principal pedestrian streets. And then that's when we are proposing, except for 1 and 2 family dwellings, the first floor of any basement or cellar not entirely below ground shall not be used solely for parking. Such area or portion of such area shall be utilized for a permitted main use or other than parking in the zoning district in which the building is located. And this requirement does not apply to buildings where parking is a main use. That's fine.
Right. Parking structure can be a parking structure.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay. Then I think we're up to, sorry. Lost my. Vacant parking.
Stairs.
Yeah, stairs. I'm looking at Tori, there's VBAs. So, Taryn, did you want to talk a little about that since you were working closely with the VBA on the?
Sure. So this provision, what it would basically do is it would allow someone to replace or reconstruct existing exterior stairs, stair landings, and ramps within the required setbacks without requiring a variance. One of the things that the ZBA did request was to create a definition for landing. They were concerned about people trying to say that their porches are landings and trying to trick this requirement. But this would cut down the number of variances for replacement staircases that the ZBA sees at every single meeting. So they had originally wanted to exempt all staircases within the required yards. A lot of codes don't require or exempt staircases from setback requirements because they're required for access and they tend to be within the setback. But the Board of Trustees don't necessarily agree. So this is where we're at currently. And
I know
Joe,
we had a conversation,
on that?
yeah, Joe, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it as simple as to basically take the stairs out of the setback requirement, but the Board of Trustees wanted to do some different ways of how, what, if it's like a replacement in kind, then they don't have to worry about the setbacks, but if it's a new stairs, they do. I think there was some discussion about like still maintaining a certain setback for new stairs on the side yards or property lines. But I just felt that that's gonna get things a lot complicated because then we'll be arguing with applicants and design professionals, what's considered a replacement and what's new. If they move it a foot or two to the right, is that a new stairs? Is that a replacement stairs? I just think it's gonna get complicated, so. My vote was to just eliminate them, and most land surveyors just normally when they do setbacks, they do them to the structure and never do them to the stairs, and I constantly have to remind them that in our code, the stairs count in the setbacks, and most of the responses I get is we're one of the few or the only one that does that, so.
Somebody who's taken a number of these applications. Replacing a stair in kind is typically very difficult because the tread and riser requirements have changed since a lot of these stairs that need to be replaced were enforced. So I think in my opinion, like that doesn't necessarily solve the problem of these applications having to go through the various boards, because it's very atypical to be able to replace it exactly the way it was, yeah.
And you know, and the other thing to consider is even if somebody built a new set of stairs, and if the home itself is already only 15 feet or 10 feet from the front yard, even if it's a new set of stairs that they put in, if they put it on the left side of the front porch instead of the right side of the front porch, the home is where it is. It's gonna end up having to get a variance regardless. And I can't see the zoning board saying to someone, yeah, even though you put the staircase and moved it, essentially a new staircase, now you have to get a variance for it. There's no way it's gonna comply anyway. The house isn't compliant with the setback. So I just think it's just not, and anyway, the zoning board, in every case that we brought in front of the zoning board for variance, I don't know if I can remember any of them that were ever denied. So why put the homeowners through this process if you're gonna approve them 100% of the time? Just make them, allow them to put the staircase in. It violates the setback.
I mean, maybe the Board of Trustees can consider clarifying or defining what replacement or reconstruction means. I mean, for both of your points, I mean, if there's a stair coming off of your front porch and you need to, whether it's not code compliant, for whatever reason you want to rebuild it, that stair was already there. If you're gonna put it on the side, you're replacing a stair. You're not, it doesn't need to be in kind, it doesn't need to be in the same place. The outline of the house and the relation of the house to the lot lines and the setbacks is not changing. So replacement of that stair shouldn't necessarily, I feel like it's be worded so that would be moved. And I think, go ahead.
I feel like from a practitioner standpoint, the more we try to define what a replacement or whatnot is, the more argument it invites, because you're going to get someone who's going to sit there and pick apart the definition of what a replacement is and say, well, we're not actually this. So I think to Joe's point, this could potentially be difficult for him to administer, especially equally in every all situation. So I think it's difficult to exempt replacements, but not new construction.
Can I say something? No,
It's sure, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't be able.
I don't. I tend to agree.
Introduce yourself.
Soon to be on the planning board, and I completely agree, it's like mincing words and inviting argument, and to Joe's point and Karen's point, I don't think we've denied a single stair that's come before the zoning board, and I think that that's what zoning code amendments are supposed to fix, is these things that come before the board unnecessarily and have a clear track record of being approved consistently, right? That is like a in stone almost proof that like this doesn't need to exist kind of thing. So I don't know what the next what the step, like does the board or does the planning board recommend changes or what?
Yeah, we can run the changes and go back to the again.
Just what you want to hear, right, Valerie?
DBA spent 2
No.
hours on this a couple months ago. Like, this is a hot topic.
Right, so.
I think the fact that this is, this feedback is like repetitive and the same, I mean, it should be.
So your recommendation would be just to blanket allow for stairs within the setback, whether it's new stairs or reconstruction. Or replacement.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah,
Yes, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Joe, first of all, who's administering this, and it is, I mean, architect, this is what we see elsewhere. I'd be ripping my hair out if I had to deal with that all the time. So,
The limitation on the landing size is a good flag though.
I like that, I do
Yeah.
like that. You can't fake a deck.
Yeah.
And what would your suggestion be on limitation on landing spots? Cause that could be another.
I would say like as required by code, like,
Yeah,
you know, you're required a landing every certain, amount of feet and it's required to be the width of the staircase, but beyond that is.
Yeah, I mean, the code says that at the bottom of the staircase, you have to have a minimum of the width of the stairs and 36 inches in direction of travel. So you're adding another 3 feet on that anyway. And that's by code, you have to do that, so.
right, and then in that setback, any landing larger than what the code would require, then that would require a variance.
Right.
Alright,
All right, is that the last one or is there another one?
there's one more, it's non-conforming uses, but that seems to get less of a comment than stairs.
So there's a lot of words here, but to really sum it up in a nutshell. Because, anyways, so the intent of these revisions is really to clarify how non-conforming structures and structures that contain non-conforming uses, how they can be repaired, altered, improved, extended, or enlarged. So this is supposed to clarify what can be done via building permit versus what's required to go to the planning board or zoning board for approval and review. So what we've done is we've come up with different factors or criteria for each responsible agency to review and to apply. It's really intended to replace kind of ambiguous standards with easier to apply tests. So it's clarifying, what's a structural alteration versus an ordinary repair, what actually is an expansion or enlargement, when can someone go to the planning board versus when is ZBA approval required. That's what this is doing in a nutshell.
So this is just, this is allowing people to make work on non-conforming structures without having two variances or.
Exactly.
But it's also, yeah.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, that would be.
If someone wants to
I'll take
replace
it
the roof
for
in
example.
kind, they can get a building permit for it. But if someone wants to add 10 feet to the roof and do all sorts of other things to it, that's going to require a more thorough review because then you're really extending or enlarging the structure. So it's clarifying, what set of rules apply to what scenarios. If a non-conforming use, for example, if they want to improve their entrance driveway, they could do it with the planning board. But if they want to add another 3,000 square feet to their warehouse, they'd have to go to the planning board, the zoning board. So it's like setting out rules of process for everybody and how that's all supposed to work together.
Just makes it clear up front for people going in.
Right.
Any thoughts on this one? All right. So you feel like you have what you need to go.
Yeah, so get back on the stairs.
Go back to the floor.
I love how the stairs is the most controversial thing out of all of this.
So funny.
It's just hard to tell a homeowner that it's.
Yeah,
gonna be 8
and
months before they
it's
can
the-
fix their fence there.
It's the most controversial one, but it was supposed to be the one that we thought was gonna be simple, like everybody agreed.
Right.
You grant the variance 100% of the times, why make the property owner go through all this to apply for, an application and get an approval from ZBA and pay all this money? If you're gonna approve it all the time, just put it in the law that you don't need it.
Makes sense.
So the last thing we just wanna let this board know is about the changes to the seeker regulations, so the state environmental quality review that you hear us talk about. Well, there was a budget, when the budget passed from New York State, there was basically negotiations and a final decision made, and sort of part of that budget discussion process that there were amendments made to the environmental conservation law. Environmental conservation law is basically the framework in which seeker regulations are regulated through. And they created these new qualifying exemptions from seeker. And part of that is anything for municipalities outside of New York City for new construction, areas that are considered a census defined urban area, which the village of Ossining is. You can develop projects up to 300 dwelling units, as long as they're on previously disturbed sites and connected to public and sewer, public water and sewer systems, which all the village's projects are. And previously disturbed sites, it's extremely flexible in its definition, but basically it's any sort of disturbance that has taken place on a site 2 years or more prior. And for the most part, most of the properties within the village of Ossining has had some sort of prior disturbance. So basically, which means that any project that you see forthcoming, for the most part, will not require a seeker review. We are working with the village board to revise the site plan requirements and review requirements to provide you some additional flexibility in order to look at some of those things that we specifically would look at under seeker in terms of like archaeological and historic preservation, some of the endangered species, habitats, those things. Also in terms of, you know, visual impacts or any sort of studies that you're looking for, community impacts, exactly. If the new seeker regulations do not, they specifically carve out that you still have to adhere to any federal regulations, state regulations, and local regulations, which is why we're going to review the zoning and update those different sections. To a larger extent, the village does have a lot of really good regulations on the books and protections. But we are going to just undertake some amendments because we don't want somebody to come in with a very, you know, with a land use attorney that challenges your ability to be able to ask for additional information or additional analyses as you go through your review.
I was previously disturbed.
So it was never previously, this is like a new definition. I can read up here. So previously disturbed is a parcel that has been substantially altered by an formerly occupied or demolished building or by another improvement or use at least 2 years before the permit application.
But it was like 200 years ago.
Right.
Is there any like?
The carve outs are dealing with agricultural lands, like agricultural use, like specific properties within like a designated like 100-year floodplain or special flood hazard area, which there's a handful of those. And it was not designated in a coastal erosion hazard area, which we don't really have.
Can I ask like about a project that we've reviewed that never approved here? Because I'm thinking of a particular project. Just right with Riverwalk, right? Where like was that site? I mean, would that site have qualified as undisturbed?
I don't know, because we'd have to take a look at that because there was already utility infrastructure on that site, if you recall, for
Right.
stormwater. So like I think it might have been considered previously disturbed. And clearly at this point, 2 years ago, they did do some major
Right.
disturbance on that.
Well,
site.
I was gonna say that too, right? Not disturbances, you know, non-permitted disturbances.
Right, so that's the issue. I think that's why they did 2 years before, so you don't have somebody coming in now and disturbing the site, but.
You do it and wait 2 years.
Right.
I mean, like that's kind of silly.
I know.
What about the films property, like that? Yeah.
For State Street? No, sorry, which one?
Some broad. But it's.
That, okay.
What about the 5 houses behind, Birchbrook? Yeah, Birchbrook, what about something like that?
I don't know, we'd have to take a look at the.
Well,
site.
that's approved and.
Right.
No, I guess it's,
No, but I'm saying if that.
Right, but if it came before,
Right.
we'd have to take a look at it.
Right.
You know, recently I had an application that had like really, there was like a small little retaining wall on its site and I think has been previously
improvement, disturbing.
And
Yeah.
in code would be, 36 water, whatever.
Well, that
Yeah,
had a
that's what-
building on that site at some point.
Just brought that up.
Yeah.
Today. I was just thinking, maybe is that, but.
Right.
Yeah, so technically that already went through seeker, but if this was going through a normal seeker process, we would have had you take a look at what they're proposing now compared to what, you know, at this point. I think it's gonna make it a little bit more challenging because you can't even ask for like environmental assessment form to a larger extent as part of the application process. So you miss some of the, you know, things right off the bat. So I think what we're gonna do is try to work into part of the application process is those additional background information right off, you know.
But the village law hasn't been revised yet. in
No, that's
response.
coming, you'll be getting that soon, like, there'll be a referral to you, but I think we're bringing that to back to the board either in August or September.
I was gonna ask about timeline, because that's like the gap is the worry.
Yeah, yeah.
But even if something's enacted after an application is, in the past, I know like when the wetlands law was enacted, we were like almost done with an application, they almost started from scratch, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming that whatever they pass would be retroactive, or it could, it can be.
Yes, and I think, I mean, to a larger extent, we don't have anything major in the pipeline yet, you know, and if anything does come in, I guarantee that before it gets approved, like anything major, before it gets approved, we'll have those things adopted. But I also think, you know, like Corey has experience in planning, you know, myself, like Tony and Ted, yeah. There's enough of us that we would know like automatically, and we know the area to flag, like this probably needs to be looked at in terms of like historic, archaeological, we could start raising those questions anyhow.
Yeah.
Because they still have to adhere to state laws and state regulations and, you know.
Brownfield, things like that.
Right, exactly, and there is a carve out for like hazardous waste, which is kind of funny because it only requires like a phase 1, which is just like a desktop review, and not necessarily phase 2. But we can, you know, again, that's part of what we're gonna work into the regulations, to say that, you know, they need to provide us information, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a little, I think it's actually gonna cause a little bit more, but especially, like, I understand that the timeline between like the EIS, but if it's a really large, complicated project, like 36, like North Water, if we started that, if that was at the very beginning, it was still gonna be just as long, because there's still gonna be that much of a review that's gonna be necessary.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that environmental groups aren't suing the state.
Sure.
They may be.
Yeah, it's all new.
Yeah,
Actually, PRI is doing a lot of presentations, and if they do, and that's another one, I'll let you know, so you can,
Would be
you
great.
could all be invited, and it's very interesting.
right, I think it's just a little bit, the EAFs were good at providing information on a project, and now we're gonna have to just
Get it,
we get it in
It
another.
was a rubric, right? It was a way of sorting through the project and,
Right,
yeah.
right. And, you know, so.
but the city's exempted, they still have their, there's.
They're in their own world.
Oh, no, well, the city they also fell into the same, or they just have slightly different parts. I think their units are like 500 units or more, or something like that, yeah.
People be out of work.
Yeah, so,
We my company lost quite a bit of business doing
Yeah.
those reviews of the city. A lot of them just stay here overnight.
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I think it's gonna become, it's a little frustrating because there are a lot of good things dealing with seeker, and, you know, especially wanting to look at, you know, some of the issues that you used to look at, especially for larger projects, and 300 units to a larger extent. I don't think that there hasn't been a 300 unit project here in Ossining, and right, but so, I mean, and you think about and how complicated or complex the projects have been that you reviewed, and they're not 300 units, so.
Right.
State Street is closed.
No, it's 150.
Oh.
Twice that project.
I did here.
Yeah.
So that's that.
So we tried to streamline things, but in fact, they're not as streamlined.
The other thing that worries me is that you could be 4 months into the process. And somebody from the public can raise, like, what about this on the site,
Yeah,
right? And if it's
yeah.
something that we didn't, like, we weren't aware of, we didn't look at, you know, then you could put something in work.
Right.
I feel like, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be less likely to happen in a secret process.
Right. All right. I have a,
Before you do that, I just want to convey something on behalf of our village manager, Tori. As everybody here knows, this is Seth's last meeting on the planning board, last meeting as chair. This is my personal comment. It is so rare to find somebody in a volunteer position who's willing to put this much time forward. So I mean, everybody here knows what the time commitment is just to be a board member. That times 10 is to be a chair, but also somebody who I've learned a lot from in this role, somebody who has tremendous capacity, works hard, has a full-time job, and is so very smart. Usually those people aren't also super nice. Seth happens to be one of the nicest people I've ever met. And I think that comes across with how he works with the staff, how he works with fellow board members, fellow chairs, and also members of the public. So I just want to say, you know, personally for me and also from Karen, what a great pleasure it's been working with you and how sad we are that we're losing you to a different community. But hopefully you won't be a stranger and we'll see you very soon.
thank you, Matt.
Yeah, definitely second those words.
Thanks.
Second that motion.
Well said, Maddie. I agree with that a
Am I
lot.
allowed to vote on this one?
Yeah, can we all?
Third, fourth?
Thank you guys, it's very kind, it's been awesome, I'm like grateful for all of you, Maddie, it's been awesome being able to work with you and you can say to Karen, you got to know her, your husband, taking flight classes together. He is so awesome, but yeah, I mean, all of you guys and Valerie, obviously, it's been awesome getting to work with you, and good luck, Corey, and excited, we barely just met, but I'm thinking, this will be, this board seems to be in really good hands with all of you guys and Corey and so awesome, thank you so much, I've loved it.
All the best in the next.
Yes, thank you much. It's not very far, I'm just over the border into Croton, so. I'll still be in the weekend, I'm not.
So you would be on the train, see on the train.
I was doing the train as much, I might be on that train some days too.
Big ups.
I get the express.
That you're giving up.
That will be a thing in December, it will be another thing.
Be strict.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Motion to adjourn the meeting. Any questions? Thanks, guys. Awesome.
Thanks for everything, Seth. Much appreciated.